So I'm now pleased to introduce Ava Smithing, who is the Advocacy Director of the Young People's Alliance, and I just learned the host of a podcast that focuses on the lives of young people. And she will be in conversation with California Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Kahan, who is so well known in the world of policy that our staff simply refers to her as RBK. So welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. I was going to use the RBK line and say, I'm really excited for this interview. This person is so important in all of my Signal chats and my work life that they are affectionately known as RBK. So thank you so much for being here. We're really glad that you're here. Assemblymember is incredible and has been a leader in protecting young people online when it comes to technology, most recently with AB 56, the social media warning label bill, which is a personal favorite of mine. How are you feeling about that? How are you feeling today?
Well, it's been a day already and it's only 10:40, but isn't that every day in this world? So I'm so glad to walk in and see all of your faces, because I will tell you that here in Sacramento, doing this work, it feels many days like a David versus Goliath fight. And it can feel super lonely, honestly, fighting for young people. And when I walk in and I see all of you in this fight with us, it honestly fills me up. So thank you. And I am incredibly proud of the social media warning label bill, not just because I think what it will do in action, but also about a week after it passed, I was watching the Today Show and the CEO of Instagram was being interviewed. And all of a sudden, the conversation became about social media being a public health crisis. And they cited AB 56 as the reason that they were starting to see it as a public health crisis. And that shift, I think, is game-changing in and of itself. And so, something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, we've come a long way to there since the Surgeon General's initial statement that we needed warning labels. But I want to back up. So you're an attorney, you're a mother. There's a lot of very pressing issues happening in 2026. What personal experiences as both of those things led you to decide that you wanted to focus on tech policy?
Definitely more the mom side of me than the attorney side of me. The attorney side of me, for those that don't know, I was a lawyer for 6 years in San Francisco, and then I taught law school for 8 years. So I have a very deep understanding of law. I was a regulatory lawyer. But so when I got here, that gives me an ability to navigate law and policy, I think, in a way that helps, for sure. But what I decide to do every day is driven by the fact that I'm a mom. And so I have 3 kids. They span from 11 to 16. And I have lived this social media, frankly, crisis alongside them. It is not the way I grew up. You are growing up in a very different time than we did. And watching it and watching the change in social media, even from when it first came out, when I was a young person, has really informed me to push government to do better. And that might, it's funny, I'm going to pivot for a second because I was a regulatory lawyer. I represented companies. I did their compliance programs. And what that taught me is really important, which was I did environmental law. My clients were good to the environment. They were not good to the environment because they wanted to be. Their job was to maximize profit for their shareholders. They were good to the environment because there were regulations in place that made them be good to the environment. And so we need to remember that. Frankly, the company's job is to maximize the bottom line, and it is my job and government's job to make them do the right thing. And so I believe every day when I show up that that's my job, representing all of you, and there is nothing more important to me and no higher calling than protecting California's young people. And I believe this is one of the largest impacts on the mental health crisis.
Absolutely. So when we talk about learning from things, I want to talk about the end of last year. We had the automated decision-making bill shelved, and we had 1064 vetoed by Newsom. I'm curious what that was like for you, and despite all of that, what are you really proud of, and what are you looking forward to for next year?
So for those who don't know, AB 1064, which you're not supposed to have favorite bills. It's like I'm not supposed to have favorite children, but I'll confess I have favorite bills, but I don't have favorite children, if anybody knows my kids.
It was my favorite bill too, so.
But AB 1064 was a bill that morphed over the year, actually, as we started to understand more what AI chatbots were doing to kids. And as we started to see the death, frankly, of Sewell and Adam Rain, we started to really understand the way kids were engaging with these chatbots in ways that were really unhealthy and dangerous. And I believe that when we hand our children a product, and that product could be a chatbot, It is an obligation to make sure that it is safe by design. And so that bill would have required that AI chatbots were safe by design for children prior to being marketed or sold to kids. It was vetoed, and I was devastated. I have the privilege of being in relationship with the parents whose children have paid the cost of this, and whether that be, Adam, who should still be here today, or kids who are just struggling, right? I mean, there's a spectrum of impacts. I think that we need to be really aware of all of that and leading with the love we have for our own children and those kids. And so despite the veto, I'm incredibly proud that I got that bill to the governor's desk. In the last week of session, the social media companies spent over $1 million hiring new lobbyists trying to fight me, so it didn't make it to the governor's desk. And I won. I didn't just win and get it to his desk. I got it there with Republicans, with Democrats, with 2/3 majorities in both houses. I got my colleagues to stand up and say, kids matter. And I will remain proud of that despite the veto.
Right. So you spoke about the relationships that you had with Megan and some of the other parents who have lost their young people to these harms, but I want to focus some on the relationships that you have with these young people. When you walked in, we had some high schoolers at the back table wave with huge smiles. What do you learn from these young people, and how do you include them in your legislative process?
I honestly think that we underestimate our youth. You guys are smarter about this stuff than we are. These companies are spending massive amount of money on social psychologists and scientists to try to outsmart your brains. We know that, right? We've seen testimony to that effect in Congress. And yet you guys are actually, and I will tell you, my 14-year-old doesn't want social media. People are like, how do your daughter's not on social media? Yeah, she's not. But honestly, it's not because of me. She's chosen not to go on social media because she has seen what it can do. And so I do think that, especially amongst the current teenage cohort, there's a shift in understanding in how you want to be in relationship with people, that you want it to be a positive experience. You don't want to be in these toxic spaces. And so I think that has been a gift to see and to watch. And frankly, I see my job as supporting that, as lifting up your view of this, of making you guys stronger in what you are trying to do to lead healthy lives. It's funny, when I talk about phone-free schools, I say that all the teens I talk to, they want it, because they want all their friends at lunch to be off their phones having conversations with them. That this isn't just about adults doing it, it's about kids being a part of that conversation and knowing that being in relationship one-on-one, not having a chatbot tell you what you always want to hear. Like, you guys know, sometimes life sucks and people tell you what you don't want to hear, and that's natural and it's part of growing and experiencing and hurting and resilience. And we need to support you in having those relationships in a healthy and dynamic way, but that you are leading us and telling us it's what you want.
Right. And how can the young people in this room get involved in that process? How can they be heard by you?
So my son came home from school a week ago and had a very strong opinion about something our congressman was not doing right. And I said, well, have you written him? He said, well, I don't vote. And I said, well, you're a constituent and he has a form online, go write him. And he did, and he received an email back that was very lengthy. I was incredibly impressed. I told my congressman, good job. But it's funny, you would be surprised by how many emails we get from our constituents. So if I represent 500,000 people, 500,000 people. So you would think that in order to make a difference, I need to get, thousands of emails. So few people contact us that if we get 100 emails on a certain subject, or web forms or calls, any of the ways you can reach out to us, my staff calls me on my cell phone immediately. This is happening in our district. This is what people care about. 100 people. Come on, teens. You know how to get 100 people to write someone pretty darn easily. That is not hard. And so that matters. And here in California, at least, we have iPads that show us the bill, the analysis of the bill by our lawyers. It also tells us what our constituents are writing in about. It shows us the public letters immediately upon reading the bill. So all of that goes into what we think. So do engage. The other thing that I think has been really great is I was invited by a bunch of teens to come talk at a high school, and they did this. They engaged me in person, in community. They asked me questions. We will show up. And then lastly, you have to vote and your friends have to vote. I explain this every time I talk to teens, but when someone is running for office, they see data. One of the data points they see is who is voting. And our seniors vote more than our teens. And so guess what the people who are elected are paying attention to? What the voters want. Well, guess what? If the voters are all seniors, they're paying attention to issues that affect seniors more than they're paying attention to college debt, because our 20-somethings aren't voting. So we don't know how you vote. But the fact that you show up at the polling place and you cast your vote is counted, and it is told to us. And so it isn't just that you're voting in that election. You're communicating that you are going to hold us accountable and your issues matter.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. I know that when I was a young person, when I was just starting to be of age of voting, I used to get incredibly frustrated because I had one vote, but these companies have commercial speech rights and millions of dollars to pour into lobbying legislators. And I'm really curious, from your perspective as an elected official, are there any tensions in between representing those young people and listening to the young people that are your constituents and also the tech companies who so frequently show up at your door? Are there any trade-offs there, and how do you navigate that?
So I personally believe, and you're going to think I'm a Pollyanna, but I'm going to say it anyways, I believe that we actually can all agree that our kids matter and our kids deserve to be safe. And frankly, I don't even think that's hard. We live in a world right now where I think most of us doubt that some of the companies believe that, right? I think that they've proven to us through some of their actions that that's not how they're making decisions. But I think we can make them make decisions based on what is in the best interest of our kids, because everybody agrees about that. Like I said, I mean, I never thought Marjorie Taylor Greene and I would be on the same side of any fight, and here we are. We agree. So when Marjorie Taylor Greene and RBK are on the same page, you know there's bipartisan support. And so we need to bring the companies along to say this is what America and California is going to demand. And I think they can still do business. I think they can still make a lot of money. I think they can still thrive as a California employer, and they can protect kids. Those things are not inconsistent. In fact, I think it is good business to protect kids, because guess what? My kids aren't on Instagram, for example, because I don't think it's safe for them. But guess what? Make it safe, and maybe I'd let them be on it. I don't know. And so I think it is actually good for business to have a safe model for kids. We are not there. But then you asked the question about, so I do think that we pay attention to California economy. Here specifically, they are a huge part of our economy. But we have to also push and say, we think you can thrive and do well. And by the way, as someone who grew up in Silicon Valley and lives in the Bay Area, most of my friends who work at these companies do not allow their children on these platforms. That tells you something. Like, we need to live in a world where we all agree that this is something that is safe for kids, and if we're going to allow them on it, it's going to be safe. So then you talk about the political money that's being spent, and it's a lot, and it can definitely shape government. I think that I ran for office because I wanted to do the right thing, and I want to show up and look my kids in the face every night at dinner and feel good about the future I'm creating for them. And so nobody can scare me, because guess what? If you want to run ads against me and you want to try to take me out, I'll leave hopefully in 12 years after I term out feeling good about what I did. But you're not going to scare me from doing the right thing, because I'm here today to do the right thing. And that's who we need to elect. And we need to stop paying attention to the ads that are being bought. And in California, we have amazing transparency laws around the ads. You can at least know who's paying for them. And we need to just elect people who are going to share our values. But that means showing up informed at the polls, which again comes back to voting.
I love it. Really pushing voting today. Okay, that's awesome. So we're talking about youth safety, and a lot of the policies we're pushing forward are really focused on young people's safety online. But I think that there are other things that we really need to focus on too, which is young people's autonomy. So how do you balance young people's autonomy and their safety when you're crafting policy? And also, how do you balance that young people across different ages, younger teenagers versus older teenagers, might need different levels of autonomy online?
Well, so I don't know how many 16-plus-year-olds we have in the room, but we let you drive because we think you should have autonomy. We think you're ready to drive. But we don't let you drive a car without seatbelts, because we know that if you're going to get in a car, we want to create a car that is safe for you in case something goes wrong. I don't think putting the seatbelts in the car takes away your autonomy. And so I really view this kind of work as putting the seatbelts in the car. And actually, the safer we make it online, the more autonomy we can give kids, because then we've got the seatbelts. We feel safe putting you in a car and letting you drive wherever you want to go. And so I actually view this work as a way to empower youth to be online in a safe environment that allows them to thrive, which currently doesn't feel like the environment we're in. And I think it is incumbent upon us to demand those environments be available to you. But I think autonomy is key, and I think it's why you need to be in the conversation with us, because we want you to thrive. And I do think one of my takeaways is online spaces are important. And so how do we create online spaces for youth to be in that are safe where they can thrive?
Absolutely. And now we have AI developing obviously so fast. You guys see it firsthand here in California. But we're looking at how young people are going to be impacted even outside of their safety and their autonomy. You know, we're looking at entry-level jobs being automated and the purpose that young people can find from those jobs, or certain developmental needs not being met because they're talking to chatbots. How are you grappling with this and doing future forward thinking as you think about AI?
Yeah, so part of it is we as a government aren't good at future forward thinking, and we need to be better at it. And so one of my goals this year is actually to start to just put together research and understanding around the future of work. I think we need to understand, where is the world going? When we have computer science degrees coming out of UC Berkeley, which 5 years ago would have been the ticket to an amazing career, and these people now can't get jobs, we're failing as a UC system. And so we need to understand where things are going, so when people enter our UCs, we know we're preparing them for the future of work. And so that really takes effort on California's part to understand and plan for where we're going. And I think that's where we can bring industry in. So I'm having conversations with industry in Hollywood and industry in Silicon Valley on, how do you become a partner in this? You want to have the talent. That's why California is what it is, in part because we have such incredible talent. And so let's create that future together. But it's really critical that we create that future and you guys can see it. Because I really focus on the mental health crisis, and I think the inability to see the future that is going to be positive for young people is one of the things that I think is a problem right now, and we should be creating that. So that's really important. But I think that, you know, one of the things that I think is important to ground this conversation is, for some reason, we think of these tech tools as really different than other products. And I actually don't understand why that's the case. And I tell this story often. I had, when my babies were born, I had this chair. It was a vibrating chair. It was the only place my son would sleep. It was my favorite thing. And then 3 babies flipped over and suffocated in the chair, and it was recalled, and I could no longer use it because 3 babies died. We decided you couldn't sell this chair or allow people to have this chair because babies might die. We all agree that that was the right thing to do. And yet with these tech tools, we say teenager after teenager can lose their life, and yet we just shrug our shoulders. So we also need to rethink these tools, and we need to think of them in the same way we've historically always thought about tools that we give to young people. They have to be safe, and if they're not, we need to pull them and do better.
Amazing. So I could sit here and ask you questions literally all day, but I do not have the time for that. I want to turn it over to you all and see if there's any questions from folks in the audience that you have for RBK here. I'd love to hear from some of the young people.
Of whoever put the babies in the chair in the first place.
So it was not. The chair was recalled because the chair was safe. It had a seatbelt. Moms thought it was safe for their children to sleep in it. And then the babies were able somehow to flip over. My baby luckily was safe, and he is wonderful today. But no, we expect that if you're going to market a product to consumers and sell it to them, that it's safe. We recalled all the drop side cribs because a few babies were hurt by drop side cribs. This is something we have always historically done with products as a government, is said that if they are not safe, we are not going to allow you to give them to consumers. And it is confusing to me that these tech tools that we are now understanding are not safe are able to continue to be marketed and sold to children despite an understanding that they're causing harm. So I just think we need to rethink it, as this is not a new problem. It's actually an old problem with a different product.
Thanks for explaining that. Makes a lot more sense now. And yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for all the amazing insight. My name is Emerson. I'm currently a high school senior, and my question is, I feel like as a young person, my peers and I, we have a lot of personal experiences. Maybe it's an issue we saw while just scrolling on TikTok that we know might be harmful or dangerous, but I think it's a bit tricky, at least for me, to kind of translate it into language or a more concrete way that I can almost like package it to, I guess, a form in which a lawmaker or someone who are in the positions of power would really care about and understand. So how would you recommend, as a young person, I can kind of find that bridge between personal lived experiences and law and policy?
So I would say communicate in whatever way feels effective to you. So I have staff that work for me, and they are a lot younger than me. And they help me create my package. And I will tell you, one year I did a bill because my staffer saw a TikTok video. And she was watching TikTok, and on the TikTok video, she saw a guy who had read the terms of service on Better Health, which, for those who don't know, help connect you to a therapist. And it turned out when you were talking to Better Health about getting a therapist, it wasn't private. It wasn't protected in the same ways if you talked to a therapist. And someone made a TikTok video about this. And my 20-something-year-old staff, I don't even have TikTok, I confess, saw this TikTok video and came in and was like, oh my gosh, we need to fix this. And we did. We passed a law, and now Better Health has to keep that confidential. And so, we actually called the guy, the TikToker, to tell him that we had changed the law in California because of his TikTok video, and he was so excited. But that just tells you, like, he was using the means of communication that felt natural to him. It was picked up by a staffer in the Capitol, and it changed the face of policy. And so I do think the way you communicate is going to be the most effective way. Don't try to talk to someone else in a different way, or you probably won't do it well. So just, if you're somebody who makes videos, if you're somebody who writes letters, if you're somebody who gives speeches, whatever it is, do what's authentic and then get it to us.
We have another question over here.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Rithi. I'm a Berkeley student who's been on the internet for probably like a decade at this point. Despite privacy laws in California being like the best in the world.
The nation. Europe beats us.
Oh, that's true. The nation. It is a scary thought to think that, like, given the fact that I've been on the internet for a decade, they've been collecting my data since I was 12 years old. So how should the youth and students navigate this world, like navigate the internet, navigate the world, knowing that their data is being collected before they can even vote and before they can even drive?
No, I always say the only reason I'm an elected official is because I didn't grow up in the internet age, you guys. The things out there about you, I got to do all that before there were even cameras on your phones. So I hear you and I feel you. I do think we are working hard to make it possible for people to delete themselves. So I will put a plug out for Drop in California. You should go online and delete yourself. You have the right to do so. Data brokers will have to delete you. It is a public service that is being provided. It is open today, but it will go live in July. So we are trying to create ways for that to not be the case. And then I would just really, this is an interesting thing, sort of I'm going to segue with the prior question, which is, that's kind of a fun project for you guys. Learn what rights you have and how to exercise them, and help educate other youth about it. And I hadn't really thought about this. We're doing a project in my district right now to educate seniors about the DROP program and help them understand how to delete themselves. But it's equally as important for young people, and how do different people communicate and how do we get these rights out? And then as you do that work, what rights are missing? What do you need that we haven't provided? We work really hard to make the privacy laws in California meaningful. But again, tell us if we're missing something. We're here to make it a reality.
Yes, and thank you so much. I hope that comes to my state soon. But thank you guys so much for listening. Let's give a big round of applause to RBK over here, changing our lives for the better.